This is Group 8's project on the Davis Southern Women's Club dataset. On our poster, we highlighted what we found was the most important information, including why we selected this dataset, how we made our nodes and links, as well as our most important metrics. We then discussed how we formatted our network based off of our most important metrics and made notes about our comparisons between our dataset and the Roethlisberger and Dickinson bank wiring room dataset.
Yeah, so like we said, we chose the Davis Southern Women's Club dataset. We chose this dataset because we wanted to learn and take an analytical approach to study how the social practices of women in the 1930s were. We wanted to see the influence each social event had in forming connections between each woman, and we wanted to see how influential certain women were at each event, and it's in the social club. For the characteristics of the data set, we had an 18 by 14 matrix, which was binary. It was person by event, 18 rows for the 18 women and then the 14 were for the social events. And it was binary. If there was a 1, it meant that a person attended the event, and if it was a 0, it meant that they didn't attend the event. For the nodes, we had 18 nodes representing the 18 women in the social club, and we had 14 nodes that represented each event in the social club. And we created a link between each person and each node to represent if they attended. For the links, like I said on the previous slide, we had our links represent event attendance. We had around a total of 103 links created between each person and event node. We kept the links undirected because it didn't make much sense to have an event attend a person in a way. And they were unweighted because we didn't want to have the links, like for example, a 1 weighted link equal if a person attended or not, and a 0 weighted link if a person did not. We felt that if we had the 0 weighted links, it would just make it more messy. So we just kept it as like if a link was there, it represented they were there.
We next observed the most important metrics in our data set. We observed the centrality of both people and events. We started with degree centrality, which helps to highlight the events with the highest degree, which had the most attendees. It also showed the women with the highest degree who attended the most events. We found that the women with the highest degree were Evelyn, Teresa, and Nora, meaning they were the most active at the events. And we also found that event 8 had the highest degree centrality, which meant it had the most attendees. We then looked at closeness centrality, which shows which nodes are most influential in the fastest flow of information. We found that Evelyn, Teresa, and Nora also have the highest closeness centrality, and event 8 also has the highest closeness centrality. Finally, we looked at betweenness centrality, which shows the influence a node has in the flow of information. Nora had the highest betweenness centrality, and event 8 once again had the highest betweenness centrality, but with event 9 and event 7 close behind. Finally, we looked at average path length, which shows the average distance between any 2 nodes and helps to represent how closely related the events make the women. And there was an average path length of about 2.29 nodes between any 2 nodes. Next, we formatted the graph so that it could best highlight the metrics we found most important. The node size is a function or ranking of betweenness centrality with minimum size 10 and maximum size 100. The color of the node is a ranking by degree. This provides a better visual of the most influential nodes in the network in both degree, which has the most direct connections, and betweenness centrality, which has the most influence and flow of information throughout the entire network. Finally, we decided that centrality was the most important factor because it represents what has the highest influence on the speed and flow of information. We noted that bridges have the highest betweenness centrality since they will lie in the most shortest paths between nodes. Event 8 and event 9 have the greatest betweenness centralities of 0.237 and 0.208 respectively, and you'll note that those are the largest nodes.
The next data set that we chose to compare and contrast is the Roethlisberger and Dickinson bank wiring room. This data set represents friendships during a project between all of the workers and the management as well. It had a 14 by 14 binary matrix, 14 representing the employees and the ones and zeros representing the relationships. One indicates that there is a friendship with another worker, and zero indicates that there's no friendship. So we found some similarities and differences between the Roethlisberger and Dickinson bank wiring room and the Davis Southern Women's Club data sets. The biggest similarity we found is that both networks consist of people in the network. And then we also found similarities in betweenness centralities that represent people who have the most influence over the event taking place. In both data sets, we can say that these are group leaders, people who have influence over information flow, whether that be event information or wiring project information. Nora for the women's club had the highest betweenness centrality, and Solderer won for the wiring project. Another similarity that we found was within the closeness centralities. These are people who are in the middle of the action taking place and also help the event run smoothly. Nora and Solderer 1 are the quote unquote closest to all other nodes in their respective networks. They are possibly points of congestion, and they're in a favorable position to control or acquire vital information and resources within the organization. Both people with high closest centralities, they both know a lot about what is going on with the event taking place. Additionally, we found differences in the big picture. There's only one event being completed in the bank wiring room, and that is a wiring project. However, in the Davis Southern Women's Club, there are multiple events taking place at once in the network. And in the women's club, we're looking at the overall club, like who or what is important and whether they're gaining or benefiting from these social events within the club. And in the bank wiring room, we're looking at management and workers, who is important in completing a single project. We also found differences in the importance of bridging links. In the bank wiring room, there are different types of employees, like inspectors, solderers, and wiremen. So bridging must have been a critical part of completing the project. Also, different employees have different tasks in the bank wiring room. So communication is of great importance in completing the project. For example, Solderer 1 was very important for bridging this gap between the different types of employees. In the women's club, there were not different types of people. Everyone is a woman attending events in the club.
In conclusion, we found that certain nodes were far more influential in terms of both metrics we visually highlighted, degree and betweenness centrality. These nodes were thus more influential in the flow of information as well as in connections between the women. As we observed the network we created, we recognized how an event, such as an event 8, the most influential, could form connections between women who are at the same event, which would be direct meetings through the event, or even not in attendance, as in a friend of a friend type of connection. Women such as Teresa, Evelyn, and Nora also had relatively high degrees compared to other women, meaning they attended the most events. Because of this, they are more likely to have a greater network of acquaintances, both via these events and via the friend of a friend connections aforementioned. We also found similarities between the two data sets observed, especially in the importance and meaning of the metrics observed. These metrics help to show the most influential people in both networks.